We're continuing our discussion of the persuasive entrepreneur here at Authors and Innovators. The key is storytelling. In this segment, we continue to talk about time, talent, and treasure. That your work is more than your title, your salary, and your influence extends far beyond the office, the boardroom, and your LinkedIn profile. We really wanted to find authors whose reflections are for a more intentional life story that you can make yourself. And I'm so pleased that Erin Wade is with us. Erin is an entrepreneur, author, and she's also a chef. She opened a cultishly popular restaurant by her own description called Homeroom in the Bay Area that was wildly successful and was covered everywhere from the Cooking Channel to the Wall Street Journal before she had her entrepreneurial exit. She also is a really thoughtful recovering lawyer and wrote a lot about culture and so much so that she authored the best-selling, or I should say, one of the most viral op-ed pieces that I've ever seen in the Washington Post, which she talked about creating a culture free of harassment and really trying to find ways to motivate people. Erin, and this is an important part of the story, before she wrote the Mac Cheese Millionaire, Building a Better Business by Thinking Outside the Box, she was a lawyer. Erin, welcome. I'm so pleased to have you here at Authors and Innovators. Tell us a bit about you and the genesis of the book.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here. So, my background, I am an entrepreneur. I'm a chef. I'm the founder of a cultishly popular mac and cheese restaurant in Oakland, California. But what my book is about is really my journey from a very unhappy lawyer to a very fulfilled entrepreneur. And it really is just, it's for anyone, I would say, who's just looking for, honestly, at a base level, just a funny story about someone in transition in life and looking for meaning and purpose, all the way to people who are looking to create more meaning and purpose in their own careers, their own workplaces, with like tools and tips on how to do that. So it can be enjoyed on a few different levels, I'd say.
I certainly enjoyed it at that level, and I want our readers to know this is a book that you can pick up, and each chapter is full of terrific wisdom. It very much is having like an extended conversation with someone who could be a mentor or a friend. So, Erin, you nailed that piece. I want to say I loved the quotes that start every chapter. That had to be fun to create. And our theme seems to be your theme, and that is I'm mindful of that great Steve Jobs quote where he talks about you can't really connect the dots of your life looking forward. I'm mangling the quote, of course. You can't really connect the dots of your life looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards.
Yeah.
So let's go all the way back where you set the stage. You talk about termination and how you came to embrace and think about being, quote, let go as a terrific euphemism, not only for losing your job, but for finding your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have, so how sort of this whole thing began is I was fired, and I was fired from my job as an attorney, honestly, because I was not doing a good job. I didn't enjoy what I did, and it's very hard to be good at what you don't enjoy doing, and it was a real wake-up call for me. So yeah, one of the chapters is opened with sort of analysis of what are these different phrases, being fired. I mean, it literally sounds like you're being put to death, right?
Shot out of a cannon, somewhere else.
I mean, same thing, being terminated, right? Like, what else could that mean? When your life terminates, it's over. So I think I started realizing that there's another phrase that I find much more positive, which is to be let go. And that sounds like you're being, made free to do something better, different. And that was really what I saw as the opportunity. Is that I was very unfulfilled, and I wanted to be fulfilled, and I wanted to have a meaningful career. And I didn't know what that looked like. I hadn't experienced it for myself. So starting my own restaurant was really my own personal Hail Mary to love my work and create a place where other people would as well.
Talk a bit more about cooking, because you started with this, right? You started in New York. You were kind of going and schlepping around, trying to find a cool experience. And then you went to law school. Can you talk a little bit about that decision? Because I think there are a lot of students who might be listening to us who say, well, I really like to do that, but I better do this. because it fits in better with what my folks want or what people are telling me I should be doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think all of us will feel that tension, right, between what is the thing that we love, which often we're afraid maybe there's not a clear path to it, maybe it doesn't earn enough money, and the thing that maybe we're expected to do, which is going to pay bills, but that maybe is not our true passion, right? So that was certainly true of me. And I sort of chart this course of starting off by like learning how to cook for free in restaurants. So I'm in college because I love food and cooking. I moved to New York. I started working as a chef there, but it was really dead end. It's a tough industry. I was making minimum wage and I just didn't see a path. And, and what's so tough about school and the way we're sort of trained is, we're being taught with school, like how to be successful, right? Someone else tells you what to do. And if you do it, you'll just keep moving up and up and you'll get good grades and you'll get into a good college and then you'll get into grad school or whatever. But I think the truth is that life is just much messier than that, right? And so what happens when you're interested in something that doesn't have a clear path? So as much as I loved restaurants, I didn't see the clear path to success there. And so I left and I became a lawyer, honestly, for the same reason I think a lot of people do, which is I was smart and totally lacked direction. And that's not a great reason to do anything, But I think getting fired, like I said, was a big wake up call because I was an overachiever. I really loved doing things. And I think to fail at this because I didn't care about it felt like a pretty epic personal failure. I was sort of too young to have given up on caring about what I do with my life. So I decided to open a restaurant. It was really a return to restaurants, and it was deciding to sort of take a path that was not clear, that I wasn't sure was going to be successful, but that I wanted to try because I wanted to create a career that I was excited to wake up for in the morning. And I thought maybe if I created my own restaurant, I could make the kind of job that no one else had thus far been willing to sort of create for me in the industry.
Well, terrific advice about testing and trying and detours. Tell us about asparagus. I don't want to give away too much, but you talk about asparagus, the plant, the growing of the plant, the tending of the plant, parts of the plant that are unseen. It's got a great metaphor. I just love that piece. Can you talk a little bit about that for people who might not know what we mean when we talk about asparagus?
Sure. So as a background, in case less of these things sound totally random, each chapter of the book begins with a vignette about something in my personal life or my past or my childhood, and it's sort of memoirish, and then it goes into how that theme sort of plays out in the creation of this restaurant and its success. So asparagus, it just begins sort of, if you're watching this versus listening to it, I'm showing a tattoo on my arm. I have it tattooed on my arm. And it's not the spear that you might think. It's actually the plant that I have tattooed. And the way that asparagus works, if you don't know anything about it, is that it actually builds this very intricate root structure beneath the ground for multiple years before the spears that you see ever grow. And if you were to see a field of asparagus, you would think like, oh, this is, hundreds of different plants because you see all these asparagus spears, but actually it's the same plant and it's all connected beneath the ground. And I just have always thought that's a really beautiful metaphor for life, because I think sometimes we feel like we have hit the end of a path, like we tried some stuff, we give up on it, whatever it is. But I think, as with my experience with cooking, I think all the experiences that we have, they're creating those underground roots. And sometimes, the path of life is waiting for them to find a way to connect and sort of, come forward and spring up above the ground. So I love it as a metaphor for how life works, for how a nonlinear life works. And I think that's how life generally is, more so than a straight shot,
And of course, the least linear path is being an entrepreneur. So I think in a lot of ways, the Mac and Cheese Millionaire really lays out for entrepreneurs what this is like. Mm-hmm. You were not an overnight success. Talk about how you started saying, I guess I'll take Dad's mac and cheese recipe. We'll try this. And then you went and tried to get people to do it. So talk a bit about the fair in Oakland and how the roots, the actual roots of the Mac and Cheese Millionaire story.
Sure. So the origin story is just that I came home one night working as an attorney. I had a really crappy day and I was craving mac and cheese. And I realized there was no restaurant I could go to that served a decent version of it, which felt shocking. I mean, I live in Oakland, California, which is a major city. And I had this aha moment where I was like, so I decided, anyway, sorry, I pull out my dad's recipe, I cook it. It's absolutely incredible. It totally makes my day. And I'm thinking to myself as I sit on the couch, this is wild that I live in this major city. There's burger restaurants, there's pizza restaurants. Like, why is there no mac and cheese restaurant? And actually, I don't know of any mac and cheese restaurant anywhere. And so it was this, light bulb moment of being like, oh, I think this idea should exist and I should be the one to do it. And so I sort of sat with that until I was fired. And then when I was like, wait a minute, I've had this idea in the back of my head that I've been excited about. What if I actually just did that? And so it took a little over a year from that point to get the restaurant up and running. And during that time, I was doing mobile food events, like, dishing out in like any place I could get potential customers to be trying it. And so I sort of tell all these stories in the book of, this wild ride of like both building the restaurant, building a customer base, like, making mac and cheese in my stuffy apartment, just, all the crazy things you have to do to give birth to something. And especially something that most people think is nuts because they haven't seen it before.
And it's so instructive along the way. You talk about a bit about room making and discipline as an entrepreneur. And you approached it as every enlightened entrepreneur does, which is, look, I want to be, I'm there with you. I want to be the cool boss. I want to have a great culture. Can you talk a bit about your thoughts, your initial experience with folks saying, well, what do we wear? What do we do? How do we do this? And your reaction as an entrepreneur wanting to hear everyone's voice and being inclusive is whatever you want. So talk a bit about rule making and discipline, because I thought you also had a really good and thoughtful segment on intentional listening for those entrepreneurs who might be listening to you and saying, well, how should I be thinking about rule making and disciplining people?
Yeah. So, like I said, I hadn't, at the point that I started Homeroom, I really hadn't worked anywhere that did inspire me, that I felt excited about. And so, my journey with Homeroom and most of the journey in the book is really about figuring out, like, how do you create, what does it mean to be a great place to work? Why do most places suck, honestly?
Right.
And so I started off, honestly, just by having to test various hypotheses that I had. And so, one that I had was that a traditional work structure is very controlling. There's very little trust there, and very little autonomy, or at least that I had experienced. So I sort of swung the pendulum all the way in the opposite direction. And I share stories about like what a disaster that is. And I mean, what I realized is that, a workplace where you have like certainly no individual freedom is its own kind of hell. But you know what? So is a workplace where all you have is individual freedom, because it's chaotic and it's a mess and people don't know what's expected of them. And it's also a miserable place to work. It has a different, the dysfunction has a different flavor. So it took me a while, but what I started realizing is that my goal as a leader was to create sort of the boundaries and structures within which people would have freedom. So an analogy I often use is that of a coloring book where, if you hand someone a blank sheet of paper, everyone's going to draw something different. And if everyone's going to make something different in a business, it's going to be a disaster. Like you need to stand for something.
Yeah.
But if you hand people a paint by number, it's all going to look the same, right? If you gave a paint by number to 10 people, it's going to be the same. And that's the way many traditional workplaces are structured. So the key was really to hand people a coloring book, which is there are outlines of what is expected of you, but within that you have the freedom to express yourself. So everyone's coloring book, you're going to have the same recognizable image, but it's going to look totally different based on how people color it. So I can give some, tangible examples of what that means. But, for example, even something as silly as a dress code, it really was a bit of a disaster when, I'd worked in places that were very tightly controlled about what you could wear. And it's not super fun to be like, this is my uniform and I feel like a number. And then it's also not fun when someone tells you wear whatever the heck you want, because it turns out, some people are like offensive at work. Some people are unsafe. Yeah. We had a problem where our customers couldn't tell who worked there. So, it was just, so that wasn't fun either. And people would have sort of stress and anxiety figuring out what to wear each day. So having, some basic stuff for like safety and hygiene, and within that people could wear whatever the heck they wanted. And, So, it's things like that are really the trick to creating a place that is enjoyable and that is fun to show up to.
I also liked your approach because you spoke to every entrepreneur who frustrated with someone who either doesn't show up on time. The easiest thing to do is, that's it. They're gone. I'm done. But you leaned in. Can you talk a bit about that? Because I thought that was just really instructive for a lot of entrepreneurs because you took a deep breath.
Yeah, so one of the chapters is on discipline. And, I had worked as an attorney previously. And it's funny, I actually chart in the book my time as a corporate attorney, but I'd actually spent all my time in law school. This is not in the book, working actually for Kamala Harris when she was DA of San Francisco. So I spent time in and around the criminal justice world as well, as a prosecutor. And I was very intrigued by this idea of, how do you change behavior versus just punish behavior?
Mm-hmm.
And an interesting idea that I had been introduced to as an attorney was this idea of restorative justice. And so as we were honestly punishing people the way most businesses do, where we were giving them write-ups or, docking shifts or, firing them if they fail to show up, I started being like, this is not working. And in fact, some of our best people are some of our
right.
greatest offenders of some of these things, like not showing up on time. And I can't just get rid of everyone. Right. So what am I going to do? And then it dawned on me, hey, there is this system called restorative justice, which isn't about punishing people. It's about how do you right a wrong. And once we start shifting to using that, it was really a sea change in what happened. So instead of someone just getting in trouble, they'd show up to work if they were late, and we'd sit down for a conversation and be like, hey, who was impacted? And they'd have to sit through and think.
I love
sometimes
that.
It's their first time thinking when it's not about you getting in trouble, if someone's asking you that question, it's sometimes the first time many people have thought, oh, shoot, my fellow coworkers were actually having to do my job for me, right? Because we're not desk job, it's customer service, and the people are still there that needed service. So, it's hard on their coworkers. It's also bad for the customers who are now getting worse service or, food that's taking longer to come out because there's one less person there to do the work. And then, the manager is now sitting there with this person instead of doing their job. So they can start to see oh, shoot, there is actually an impact on this whole universe. And then you ask, this is the fun part. I think this is, again, sort of the coloring book. It's how are you going to make this right? I'm not going to tell them. They can think for themselves, but they do have to answer the question. That's the boundary of the coloring book. And people would come up with all sorts of really creative things that they would do. They would go up and apologize to tables and be like, hey, I was late and that's why your food took longer. Here's a dessert on me. They would help people, who are on staff with their side work or cover shifts. They would actually write themselves up to save the manager the time or, come up with a time that they were going to follow up and say that they had done all this stuff. So people came up with all sorts of great ideas, but it was much more empowering, much more meaningful, and honestly, a much better deterrent for that happening again, because it was about integrity, thoughtfulness, being part of something bigger than yourself. And that is just much more inspiring than just being punished.
And you do that so well because you tell it, you don't, and show it instead of just laying it out there. You really embrace the values that I think you shared in the book around communication, collaboration, and collective goals. And that really connected all three. Talk a bit about, I love this story too, when you were trying to figure out star performers. Wow. How is it that these people can be just amazing servers that everyone loves? What's the secret, and how do I get more of that out of people on my team? Could you share that a bit? Because that was really fun.
Yeah, totally. Too. I think this was as I was trying to figure out, again, those structures within which people could be free to express themselves. I was trying to figure out service standards, right? A lot of restaurants just give you a script. Hi, I'm so-and-so. Welcome to so-and-so. Would you like fries with that? Those are scripts. We've all heard them. They're deeply impersonal, and they're not fun as a worker either.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I forget? Am I supposed to say this? Right.
Totally. But then if you don't have any service standards, again, people are going to do all sorts of stuff, maybe not stuff you're going to be happy about representing your business. So I went to actually my best server at the time, and I was like, hey, you just do an incredible job. What is your guiding principle? And he actually had a really beautiful, coherent response, which was, I'm always trying to be the best part of people's day for everyone who comes in, but we serve thousands of people a week. So realistically, there's only so much time I'm going to get with everyone. So I challenge myself to stoke out 5 tables every shift, which means I'm just going to go above and beyond for this to be like their best dining experience of the year. And so 5 times a day, I'm going to do that. And it's going to be really memorable. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. Like that is the structure and guidance that I need to give people within which they can be personally free. And that's such a fun challenge, right?
Yeah.
And it turns, serving into something much more meaningful. Like, how are you going to be the best part of people's day? A minimum of 5 times a day. That's incredible. So people came up with all sorts of creative things that they had so much fun doing that like brought a lot of like joy to, the tables, and brought a lot of joy and like meaning, and honestly just made their days, variable and different and creative and fun versus like rote and a grind,
And some of this you can replicate, but I love the simple prompts for folks. So, Erin, you built this business. You attracted somebody who wanted to buy this business. You thought a whole lot about how to make it work. And the reason it, of course, was so successful is you concentrated so well and deeply on communication and creating that culture. You wrote an op-ed that prompted even the EEOC to say, hey, maybe we should be thinking about having structures around having people feel safe in the workplace. So you sell this great business. You have terrific influence. What's next?
Oh, well, I mean, you're listening to it. I think, I realized at some point that there's, different ways. I think that's something I really challenge people in the book, is to really challenge their definition of what does success mean to you? Because I think the thing it means to most of us is just more of the same thing. I had one successful restaurant, so people would be like, when are you going to build 100? And I was like, that's not my joy. Like, I don't want to go build 100 restaurants. But I realized that the thing that I was really excited to scale was all these great ideas that I'd spent a decade with a brilliant team of people developing that I knew worked. So that was really the genesis of the book. That is the genesis of my work now. So I work with other entrepreneurs, other companies.
I love it. That's great.
And
that's
getting
great.
to write and speak and talk about these things because I want other people to use them. I want them to create great places to work and great businesses that thrive,
And what are you reading these days? What are you reading? What are you watching? What are you thinking about? What's inspiring you?
So, it's funny. I think, like I said, the structure of the book is meant to be very digestible. I think I have trouble concentrating on really on lengthy things. And so I wanted every chapter to be something that was like short, funny, digestible, meaningful, so that you could read the book as a whole.
And you succeeded. It's really a fun read. It really is.
Oh, thank you. But I hope you could also just pick out a chapter and be like, oh, I could read about this one thing. And so I think I love that structure. So honestly, I'm a huge New Yorker reader. That's probably the thing I read the most of because it's lots of different authors, writing great, mostly nonfiction about different things happening in the world, different people's lives. I think that's the thing I'm most often reading. That's probably my favorite. And in terms of what I'm watching, I think like every other industry person, I just finished the most recent season of The Bear, and
of course,
it's a great take on the hospitality industry. It's a little too accurate.
More to learn. Oh, that is just terrific. Erin Wade, thank you so much for joining us. The book is The Mac Cheese Millionaire: Building a Better Business by Thinking Outside the Box. You can also check out the Mac and Cheese Cookbook, which is available at independent booksellers everywhere. And tell us more a bit. Where can people hear you connect? Do you have podcasts? Are you thinking about what's next in that realm as well, Erin?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to follow more about my work, I'd say head to my website, erinwade.co. You can also follow me on social media at the Erin Wade, and I will keep you posted on all the exciting things I'm doing, places I'm speaking, stuff I'm writing. I'd love you to join me.
Excellent. I can't wait to see what's next. And hopefully our audience will dive right in to the Mac and Cheese Millionaire. Thank you again, Erin.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.